Well, James, we made it back for a second week against all odds.
Feels good to
But
be back.
it's good. It's great to be back. 8 weeks away, draft weekend. It's coming.
So, Andrew, how many mock drafts have you done at this point with 8 weeks left?
Oh man. Uh,
Is it greater or less than the number of weeks we have left?
I think it's probably pretty close. Close to being even. Let's go to the official tracker of my mock drafts and we'll take a look. We have six, only six.
Ooh, man, gotta bump those numbers up.
But just like any intense process, this is going to be an exponential distribution. And as we get closer, that number is going to keep going up and up and up. I'm going to start doing crazy things. I'm taking 5 quarterbacks in my first 5 rounds. I'm trying everything that I can.
You never know.
You never know.
Gotta be prepared.
Hey, last year we saw a big quarterback retire in the middle of our draft, so you got to be ready for anything. James, I'm going as far as training my left hand to use the mouse pad, just in case something happens. If I'm in a sling, I can still draft at my usual speed and accuracy as I would with my right hand. I'm not taking any chances this year.
Well, that is very smart. I was concerned you were going a different direction at the start of that sentence, but I'm relieved that it didn't go the direction I feared.
I'm glad I could meet all your hopes and dreams. Well, without further ado, let's jump into this week's league news.
All right. Well, we have received a few rule change submissions from y'all. I was deeply offended. I think our rules are perfect, but we will consider them, and you guys can keep sending those in, and we'll compile them, and we'll bring them to the group, and we can all vote on them. Do you know the timetable that we're playing on that, Smeed?
I think we'll probably take submissions for the next week and then put them to a vote the week following. That way we can lock everything in about a month and a half in advance of the draft, because if there are any changes that come in that might affect scoring or different things like that, we want to give everyone enough time to prep for the draft with any new changes in place.
Yeah, you'd hate for some rule change to make your 20 mock drafts that you've done completely pointless.
Exactly, yeah. So one thing that was suggested to us by Sean Skerbeck was in the extreme case that the NFL season gets canceled this year, to run a Madden fantasy football league where we still get together and we draft players, and then we have Madden simulations and we have weekly matchups based on that. I thought that was a great idea, a way to stay connected and to get our fill of fantasy football. So we're going to kind of use that as our backup plan in the worst case scenario that the season gets canceled. So thank you, Sean, for that suggestion. And just know that we are going to have fantasy football this year, whether it's real life players or virtually. And one quick note on the database, still working on wrapping up some of those final items on there, making a few enhancements. So hoping to get that done in the next couple weeks here as well.
Yeah, that CGI takes a while to fine tune.
3D rendering.
For it. All right, here we go. It's NFL news time.
So far, we have gotten reports of about a third of the teams having either their players or their staff infected with the coronavirus. And they also canceled the Hall of Fame game to take place in early August. So things are moving. This virus is playing an impact. So it's a definite possibility that some bigger changes come through, potentially a shortened season or different changes from the league. So we just got to be aware of that, and we'll keep you guys aware of anything that we hear. So far, it sounds like they're planning on having preseason and regular season, but we'll just have to keep a watch out for that.
Yeah, I feel like if anything's gonna go, it's gonna be those preseason games next. Since will 1 week make a huge difference between the Hall of Fame game and the first week of the preseason? I don't know.
Yeah,
we can always hope, though.
can always hope. Well, for some more lighthearted news, let's head over to the crazy stat for the week.
Woohoo!
So, James, last year...
Wait, hold up. Gotta get my squat.
Get that squat going. Last year, we know that the pick of the draft was easily taking Lamar Jackson in the 11th round.
Oh, easily. Great pickup. Great.
Number one quarterback, first time unanimous NFL MVP, taken in the 11th round.
Not bad for a running back.
Not bad for a running back. But what if I told you that 4 out of the last 5 years, the top quarterback was drafted in the 9th round or later?
What?
Yeah.
I don't believe you. You're going to have to go through each one of them.
I am going to have to. 2019, as I mentioned, Lamar Jackson drafted by Zack in the 11th round.
Okay, but that seems like a fluke because who knew that Lamar Jackson was going to take such a huge leap forward?
Right. But we look at 2018, top quarterback was Patrick Mahomes, drafted by Cy Sunkum in the 9th round.
Man, I feel like in my mind, Cy drafted him way earlier, but good, solid pickup.
Now let's jump to 2017. The top quarterback that year was Russell Wilson, and he was drafted by Jackson in round 9.
Wow.
2016 was Aaron Rodgers. He was drafted in the 3rd round that year by Jay Kessler. So that is excluded, but...
Leave it up to Aaron to screw up the
always.
pass. Gosh.
But 2015... Cam Newton finished number 1 overall. He was drafted by Sean Skerbeck in the 11th round.
Dang.
So it seems like 9th round and later are where the money quarterbacks are going. That seems to be where they can be found.
Now, of course, I'm guessing there were several quarterbacks drafted that late that did not become the first overall.
Absolutely.
All right, Smeet, I want you to call your shot right now. What quarterback drafted past the 9th round or later, is going to have the best shot at first overall?
You know, James, I see what you're trying to do, but you're not getting that information out of me.
Dang it! Damn it! Gah! Ah! This close. Gah!
It was a good try.
Sorry, everyone. I thought that would work. I was trying to help everyone.
I'll tell you after the draft, after I draft him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's a Andrew Smeed guarantee.
TM.
This week we got the chance to talk to our 2019 league champion, Zack Eichten. We hit him with a couple of would you rather questions and had an interview about his fantasy football history in the league. So without further ado, let's jump over to our interview. Well, we're here with our league champion, 2019 league champion, Zack Eichten. Zack, thank you for joining us.
Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Now, before we get into talking about your successful season, we do just want to get a personal update from you. You know, what's going on in your life? What are some of the big things happening in the world of Zack Eichten?
Well, just, living life to the fullest, really grabbing the bull by the horns, as they say. Big updates. Let's see. I guess I am getting married. So that is a big
Whoa.
yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. Despite the tabloid rumors that it's getting called off, it is still on. Um, sorry, that was in League Championship, League Champions Monthly. So you guys probably didn't get that this year, so that's why you didn't see those reports. But it's it's going on still. July 18th is the big date. That's exciting. Let's see what else is going on. I'm in a perpetual limbo of legislative special session hell. So that is interesting.
And could you just remind us what your job title is?
I am a lobbyist. So
Boo.
I am the swamp.
Boo.
Yes, boo is right. And what I do is I tell people how they should vote. But when things are at the scale that they are now at, they do not care anymore what I have to say. So that is that. Update for my job. I don't know. I'm looking forward to getting back to that fantasy football grind this fall.
Very nice. Well, let's talk about 2019. 2019 for you, it was a historic season to say the least. You started
Exhilarating.
oh, I'm sorry,
It was exhilarating.
exhilarating. Your words and very true. You started the season with 7 wins right off the bat, a 7-game win streak, which ties for second most, only behind your 2016 record where you had 8 wins in a row. You finished the
Yes.
regular season with 10 wins, a record of 10-3, which was the first time in league history that anyone
Broke the
finished the
seal.
regular season with 10 wins. You then went on to playoffs where you averaged a 36.8-point margin of victory in your 2 playoff games, where you got your first championship, but you also set the record for the highest average points per game this season. So talk to us. What happened?
Well, what happened is my draft strategy, highly criticized by some in the league, turns out to be a winner yet again. As far as getting me not in the losers bracket, but this year actually all the way to the championship. We got Lamar Jackson, I think in what was it, the 9th or the 12th round or something crazy. And obviously he was a real big part of this team's victory. You can't deny the kid has talent, and we got there without him. As far as those big wins, though, I mean, what it comes down to is I guess my team just wanted the victory more this year than other teams did, and that's what it comes down to. More
so
heart.
True. Beautiful. So the first year of the league, you missed out on playoffs, but the 4 years after that, you were able to make the playoffs every time. But you just happened to lose your first matchup in those seasons. This year, obviously, you were able to go the distance and win, and you even set the record for the highest playoff average score, or the highest playoff total score with 168.7 points. What do you think about this year? Made it successful?
Well, I mean, let's go back to that first season where we had 6 teams in the league in that very first season. Great group of guys. I knew nothing about football back then, so I refused to count that in any sort of statistics or memory. Moving
Don't
on
worry,
from that,
I also wasn't counting that, and that was not included.
Oh, right. You weren't there for that one, so I forgot. You were one of those add-ons that I voted against. So looking at everything else, it's all about just drafting the right players. And then I think I heard last week on Commissioner's Corner here that we had a record low number of trades. Do either of you remember if I made any trades last year? Because I do not.
You did make one trade.
Who did I trade with?
Let me do some checking on that one. But I do have you down for one trade this last year.
Yeah, because I think that's sort of a secret to my success here is I like to make at least one trade a year, really spice things up, make sure that the team stays on their toes. You never know if you're going to be the one that gets pushed off to a different team, a worse team than mine. So makes the guys really play harder, if you ask me. Talking about previous playoffs, we're finally in a position where we had the right group of guys able to go the distance. Let's just put it out there. Those other groups that made it to the playoffs, as much a condition of other teams, ineptitude compared to my team's goodness. So we had to, we finally made the right adjustments to actually have a good team going into playoffs.
So just for a record, the trade was with Clay Tucker's team, Hop Aboard the Magic School Bus. You sent Aaron Rodgers and O.J. Howard in return for David Johnson and Evan Ingram.
Oh, that was a bust. That trade was, I wanted my best friend back, David Johnson, but yeah, we'll just say it. Evan Ingram played maybe one game after that, and David Johnson got negative points, I think, through the rest of the season. But with Lamar, we weren't going to play Aaron. Wanted to give Clay's team a chance there, and O.J. Howard was just atrocious, and I wanted him off the roster in a way that didn't make me feel bad about just dropping the kid.
Yeah, seems like there's just zero quality of player in that trade on both sides.
Yeah, you look at the trade and you think, wow, that probably made an impact. And then you actually look at the impact and say, no, you did nothing. You did not improve your team. You marginally improved Clay's team. But it was fine. I like doing one trade, speculative trade. We thought David was going to make a big bounce back in that last half of the season there. And we had him on a few other teams. So we wanted to, really round out the season, bring our best friend aboard. We should have won in 2016 when David brought us all the way. So it's good to have him on the squad when we finally did get that last W.
Well, not all trades can be wins, but one thing that was a win that you have alluded to was your draft this year. One of the strongest drafts looking back in hindsight. So let me just go through some of your picks this last year. You got Julio Jones in the first, Dalvin Cook in the second.
Good pick.
That was huge. That was a big pickup for the squad.
T.Y. Hilton in the third, before the news of Andrew Luck hit. Just a reminder. Josh Jacobs in the fourth.
Yes.
Great pick.
Great
Cooper
pickup.
Kupp in the fifth. Kenyon Drake in the sixth.
See, that Kenyon Drake pick is the one. Yes, exactly. That is the one that really sealed the deal for our the last half of our season. The Dolphins and Kenyon were just not a good system to work with. So getting him over to Arizona there, did knock off my man DJ3, but that's fine.
So we did mention Julio Jones in the first, T.Y. Hilton in the third. This last year was your first year taking wide receiver in the first round and taking your second wide receiver before round 5. Does this play any impact to your strategy going forward of maybe targeting some of those wide receivers earlier on?
You know what? I don't think so. I think that looking back, if I had been able to get a different player other than T.Y., he did his job, but I probably would have picked someone else. As you said earlier, the Andrew Luck announcement happened mere moments after I picked up T.Y. And Brissett was able to get him some points this year. It was just not the output I was expecting from a third-round draft pick. So if I would have to be honest, I was not excited about picking receivers, and I probably wouldn't do it if they weren't the best available at the time.
Fair enough. Let me hit you with this other stat that might play an impact into your drafting strategy. Been in the year, league of record, officially 6 years, and only 2 times have you drafted from the back half. The first time was in 2016, where you were in spot 7 out of 10, finished as the regular season champion, and in 2019, where you were in spot 10 out of 12, finished as the regular season champion. Is your preferred spot now in the back half of the draft?
I think the value of getting that around the horn action and getting someone early in that second round is really what brings a lot of value to my team. I think there's a lot of pressure on those top pick guys. I look at someone like Saquon this year, who just didn't have a great year. Did fine for most of the games, but just overall wasn't the superstar that folks were expecting, wasn't really deserving necessarily of that number one pick. You look at a guy like Alvin Kamara, again, just really below expectations, versus the value of someone like Dalvin Cook early on in that second round. I think that my preferred drafting spot would be, looking back, probably in the back half here versus the typical front half draft that I've had. I'm looking at the draft from last year when Saquon, McCaffrey, Kamara, and then DeAndre Hopkins at number 6, David Johnson at 7. Like, it was just, and Todd Gurley at 8, Le'Veon at 9. Looking at those mid round and even early round picks, I don't think any of them necessarily lived up except for McCaffrey to their draft spot. So I'm happy with the value that you get with a late round first round and an early second.
Going to jump in to the middle of this interview to talk about this week's sponsor. This week, our sponsor for the episode is Wheat Thins. Wheat Thins, one of the tastiest snacks I've ever had. Wheat Thins, eat this. While we had our guest on the show, we hit him with a would you rather question. So let's jump over to the would you rather question for this week featuring Zack Eichten.
So, Zach, would you rather have $1,000 in your fab budget for the entire season and everyone else still just has $100, or have a list of who will be the top 10 running backs and wide receivers before you draft?
I'd rather have the list. I think, especially with this crew, all of us being, I think, fairly reserved in our budgeting. If there's a player that I really want, $100, I'll be able to get them. That top list though, that would be invaluable. Even in the first, that's 20 players. You guarantee that you're getting at least, top 5 of either a running back or a receiver in that first sort of go around there. And probably another top one. And you can't always guarantee that when you're looking at who's going to actually perform in the post draft.
Smeed, do you have any input? What would you rather?
I would definitely have the list. I think the list comes with a factor of certainty. There's a certainty that these players will be in the top 10 at the end of the season, where regardless of how much fab you have, if you're blowing it on someone, you have no idea how they're going to end up. You have, TJ Hawkinson last year put up like 40 points in week 1 and then just fell off the map. So I'd rather have that certainty that comes with the list.
Congratulations. You both got it right.
Yay.
You win. All right. Now, more of a Zach specific would you rather? Would you rather win the title again next year or have Fitz be fully potty trained?
I'd rather win the title. Absolutely. Fitz is
100%?
100%. Fitz really only has his bad moments. He's looking at me very cranky as I'm talking about this for the world to hear. But he really only has his moments of losing control when he sees people he thinks are exciting. So as long as we can get him outside before that happens, I don't really care if he pees on concrete outside. I'd much rather win the title, and I would choose that in perpetuity. Absolutely.
That was this week's Would You Rather question. Now let's jump over to the second half of our interview.
Now, do you have any draft day superstitions that you always follow? Like you wear a certain pair of socks, or you eat or don't eat certain type of food?
Yeah, I on the food one, I make sure I definitely don't eat any gluten leading up to the draft. You got to keep the stomach clear for that. Other
Makes
than that,
sense.
it's just doing the little bit of prep work that I put in, trying to figure out who I'm gonna be picking them in those top those top 12 spots, and then just really going by the seat of my pants. Back when we were going to the same drafting spot, last 2 years, we're switching up this year, I know, but the night before, definitely go watch the fish video for at least 4 hours, get your mind right. We won't have that this year, so I'll probably have to download one on my phone to try to mimic the experience. But that's a draft day strategy.
So over the course of the league's history, many, many memorable moments. Do you have a favorite?
I think my favorite moment is the realization about halfway through the season where Luke ended up losing and did the punishment, one of his many times losing, and having to do a punishment on the stand-up comedy act for the punishment. And going to the comedy act absolutely was a favorite moment, but my favorite moment was probably leading up to that towards the end of the season when people realized that I had set it up for it to be the stand-up act in case I had lost that year. Then the punishment wouldn't be that bad for me having done open mics before. And that to me was just true bliss of people finally realizing that and figuring that out. So that's my favorite moment, is pulling one over on all you fools.
Well, Zach, you've proven yourself a formidable fantasy owner, but everyone has a weakness. And yours appears to be none other than David Book.
Yeah, I cannot beat that guy. Oh my gosh.
Just to throw a
Terrible.
couple of stats out there about your contest against David. You score 86.7 points on average when playing against him. You have a total record of 3-10, and your last win was all the way back in week 2 of the 2016 season. You've been 0-7 against him since. Does this worry you?
Oh, every time. Everybody has those opponents that you just can't quite seem to get a win on. If I remember right, I think David has a similar record actually against you, Andrew, of just very, very bad performance. You hate to see it, but it's part of the game. You have to respect the talent you see out there on the field. And sometimes your guys just don't show up to play, and there's not much that you as a manager can do about that. So I like to think that, of all the people in the league, I would still prefer David to win over a lot of people. So if I can help him on that path, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, they say, Superman has his kryptonite and Batman has the sound of his mother's own name. So it's hard to get over your Achilles heel. Now, finally, not only are you the reigning champ, but you've now set the record for average points scored in back-to-back years. How do you think you're going to keep this momentum going forward into next season and defend your title?
Well, I think a lot of players out there fall into two very large camps that I like to try to avoid. The team managers who go for only big names will only go for names that they know outright, or had a really good last season, and tend not to focus too much on where they're at this year. And then there's the other players on the complete opposite side, that, everything's speculation. They're going big or they're going home, and usually they end up going home. I like to split the difference, especially during draft season. That's when you really make the big bucks, is, just taking the player that's the best fit for your team. I think I've gotten pretty good at that over the years, and I'm hoping to, keep that momentum going forward. We got really lucky this past year getting Lamar so late in the draft. It's big, big pickups like that. We had who was picked before Lamar Jackson. You got to look like Jalen Richard, the Oakland running back, but before a starting quarterback for Baltimore. You got to look at high value things like that. At least that's what I like to do. Try not to get too caught up in the name recognition, and just go with your gut. And that's worked pretty well for me so far.
Fantastic. Well, best of luck to you in this next season, and thank you for your time today. And we'll catch you on the flip.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on the program, boys. We love to see great content like this being produced.
Well, thank you for joining us this week on Commissioner's Corner. Tune in next week when we get a chance to talk to the 2019 second place finisher, Sean Skirbeck. We'll catch you then. Signature sign off.
Wink.
Just for the record, I would choose Fitz being potty trained. I know how much of a burden that is on you.
It's very honorable.